Emily, just give me the high sign when you're ready, and we'll proceed.
Will do. I think we're close. We're testing right now.
Technology.
How's everybody been? Everyone staying safe? Josh, I appreciate you coming back to another board. Hopefully this one goes a little more smoothly.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Couldn't find the button there.
Okay, I think we're good. I think the feed is live. So.
Okay. Well, without further ado, I call to order this meeting of the Board of Zone and Building Appeals on July 23rd, 2020. Ms. Wheeler, would you please call the roll?
Miss Barnard?
I'm here.
Miss Bowles? Oh, I think you might be muted, but I see you there.
Sorry, here.
Thank you. Mr. First?
Here.
Pastor Linder?
Here.
And Mr. Retke? Who I think was said would be absent this evening.
Okay, the next item is approval of the minutes. Are there any changes, additions, or deletions to the minutes from the previous meeting? Hearing none, those will stand as approved. Next item is approval of the agenda. Are there any changes, additions, or deletions to the agenda? Hearing none, that'll stand as approved. Next item is swearing in of speakers. If you plan to speak this evening, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give in front of this board will be truthful? If so, say I do.
I do.
I do.
Thank you. Next item is public comment. Is there any public comment? I'll take it as a no. Is there any unfinished business? All right, moving on to new business. Item 1 is application 2020-5254 for 13985 Taylor Road Southwest for Caliber Collision. Ms. Wheeler?
Thank you, Mr. First. The first case this evening, this is, as you said, for Caliber Collision. The applicant is requesting BZBA approval for a non-residential zoning variance. This is to construct a new 16,000 square foot auto body repair and collision shop. The project did receive major site plan approval at the July 9th Planning Commission meeting. And the variances being requested are as follows. The first being variance for a front yard setback. The code requires 10 to 20 foot setback, and they are requesting approximately 141 feet. The zoning code also requires a side yard setback of 10 to 20 feet, an aggregate setback of 20 to 40 feet. The proposed development will have setbacks of approximately 22 feet and 73 feet on either side. Additionally, the code requires side or rear parking within the community commercial zone, and the site plan as proposed would have parking in the front of the structure. Lastly, vehicular repair heavy is not listed as a permitted use currently in the CC zone with the new zoning ordinance, so a variance would be required for the use type as well.
Okay, thank you. Would the applicant like to add any description or color, or let us fill us in on any other information?
Yeah, thank you for everyone's time tonight. My name is Josh Allen. I'm with Cross Development. We are the proposed developer for this project. This is probably a non-typical use or thought of what you might think of a auto body shop would be. A lot of this work will be done inside the building. You won't have a bunch of garage doors opened, and you won't have air guns going off and that kind of thought and view that you might have of a typical auto body repair facility. These are pretty clean and tidy, and they do a very good job of maintaining a very professional brand. They're very user friendly from a customer perspective. That's why they like to go in more of a commercial setting, because that's how they like to run this type of business. And so we feel this is a great location for this, kind of on the periphery of the existing commercial area. And the site seems to be kind of the best location for this type of use, in our opinion. And so with everything being contained and everything being in a very good look to the building and to the site, we feel it's a good use to be adjacent to this kind of commercial facility. This will employ about 20 to 25 people. They all have a pretty high average salary. I would say it's about 75,000 average for a facility like this, depending on how many painters they have or how many mechanics or whatever that they may be. That could vary by location, but there's a site plan, okay? And so you can see that's, I guess that threw me off a little bit, but I was talking about the employees. So there's about 20, 25 of them. And then this type of business it'll generate more than what you may think an automobile related type of facility would generate in sales. It's about 300,000 per month type of business. So it's a pretty heavy sales type of business, which is again why they like to be in more of a commercial setting. And so what we've tried to do is dress up this building to be similar in aesthetics to the adjacent commercial structures. It's not the typical Caliber branded colors, and we've done that by design to fit in with the surrounding area. It's got a nice landscape plan for it already. And then we've also, the reason for some of these setback variances, we've also tried to put this layout on the site so that it, again, kind of matches the existing center that's to the south of it, and it's not pushed way out on the road and look maybe kind of awkward compared to the rest of the center. So I know it doesn't exactly follow the code that's newly adopted, but we tried to take some context into consideration when we were laying this property out, and also drawing what the building could potentially look like. So that's kind of a very quick high-level overview. I'm happy to answer more questions specifically as we get into it, but that's kind of where we're at.
Thank you. Board, is there any additional discussion questions?
Mr. First, I'd like to jump in if that's okay.
Sure.
I just want to give some context to the site as a whole. This property has sat vacant for over 20 years since the development of the Taylor Square shopping plaza that is adjacent around it. It's one of the last remaining parcels that was never built. A lot of it because it's a very unique parcel. It's almost like a bowling alley. It's kind of tucked away towards the back. If you're looking for context of where this is located, it's just east of where the Gander Mountain used to be, or where the Big Sandy is currently now. So it's set vacant for quite a while. It is in line with the character of the big box retail center that surrounds it. Our code is not absolutely perfect. There are some slight changes that we're clearly need to make it more uniform across the board. And there's no way to be able to do that without trying different cases such as this. And that's why obviously you have the amount of variances before you. But it does fit within the context of the existing community and the other built environment that is around it. We feel that it's a good use. It's somebody Caliber and cross development we've been working with actually since before this was adopted. So we knew this was coming, and it was kind of slow going. And then obviously COVID sort of slowed that even more further down. So we are absolutely in agreement that this is a good use for the site. We don't feel that it's going to require a huge amount of additional traffic, and any vehicles that would be there on site are going to be locked and stowed away. It'll basically look like it is a larger scale sort of warehouse building, just like the Babies R Us or the Gander Mountain was before. And so we feel like it fits within the overall scheme of that shopping plaza. So if there's any other additional questions on specifics of the zoning or any of the variances or anything like that, I'd be more than happy to help answer any of those and give any other context that may need to be needed.
Thank you.
Chairman.
Sure.
Yes, I have a question for the applicant. Could you articulate the hardship or practical difficulty that you would have being able to comply with the front setback requirement?
Yeah, there's actually a couple here, which was not only did we take the context of the neighboring buildings and layouts of the parking lot on those properties in mind, but there's also a 20-foot sewer easement that runs kind of diagonally through the front of the property. You can see it on this this plan here a little bit. And there's existing topography out there that is also makes it a little bit difficult to push everything right up on the road. Then we would be way higher in elevation than the existing center would be. In our opinion, it would look even more awkward than if it was set back a little bit like this. And it does allow for a little better landscaping, I believe, to be in front of the property with this kind of setback. So really those are the hardships that we saw. And that's why we feel this is the best for the location. And again, there was a little bit of that discrepancy between the different codes at the time that we first applied and then what was adopted.
With respect to the proposed site plan, you have It looks like you have a proposed parking lot that would be in the front of the building between the sewer easement and the building itself. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes. Those parking spaces, there's like 19 there. Those are for customers only. So those will be when people come in and either dropping off their car to get fixed, or they're checking on their car that's currently being fixed, or they're maybe filling out an insurance policy form, something along those lines. That's where they're going to park. And then the rest of the time, all of the vehicles that are in the process of being repaired or back behind the fence on the side of the building in the rear.
Would it be possible, in your opinion, to be able to move the building closer into that area where the parking lot is proposed and move more of those parking spots into the side or the rear of the building?
That would be difficult. And the only reason I say that is because once you get beside it, behind the building, then that's the designated fenced in storage area, if you will. And so to have customer parking spaces back behind there would be very difficult to access because of the fence and the gate that's required.
Yeah.
So we'd have to really look at how the accessibility of those spaces would be in that kind of situation.
Did you consider that in preparation on the site plan? Was that something that was looked at and then determined to be practically impossible for this project?
That's correct. Yeah, we did look at a couple scenarios, and you can also tell that this property has a unique angle to it that runs up. You can see it a little bit on the south side of that drawing that really pinches the property as you get closer to the road. And then, so everything, once you move it all closer to the road, it gets very hard and very condensed to how to get around the building. So we took all that into consideration when we were laying this property out.
Thank you. I appreciate you addressing those questions.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Shook. Is there any other additional discussion?
Pastor Linder, just a quick question, Mr. Chairman.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And if the developer knows, what would be the normal hours of operation, 7 days a week generally, or what? If you can just answer that, I'm curious.
Yeah, generally speaking, and I can't speak for every location, but in general, the company is like a 5-day-a-week business. Saturdays and Sundays are not typical business days for them. And as far as hours of operation, it's fairly similar. It's like 8 to 6, very similar to any kind of commercial use. And so there's not long hours. They're not going 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the evening and that kind of thing. So.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Sure.
I just want to address the substance of my questions. I think it's important that, for any variance request that you get, not just this one, that the applicant has to address that hardship and practical difficulty issue, because the board should not grant a variance just based on convenience alone. Otherwise, we could run into a situation where we are forced to grant variances in the same area for the same reason in the future if we create that precedent. And the applicant has articulated at this point the unique nature of this property and the basis for that hardship or practical difficulty based upon based on both the fence that's in the area as well as the sewer easement.
Thank you, Mr. Shook. The education is as always appreciated. Is there anything anyone else would like to add? Additional discussion? If not, I'll certainly entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, this is Pastor Linder. I would make the motion, but I'm a little hung up on how to phrase it based on the different variances involved. So if someone wants to walk me through that, I'll definitely make a motion for approval.
So if you're intending, Pastor, if you would be intending to approve the variance application in its entirety, you need only make the motion in that language. If you are intending to make a motion to approve the variance application in part and deny it in part, you would need to specify the variances that you'd be granting and the ones you'd be denying.
Thank you very much. I do make a motion that we accept or approve the variances in their entirety.
We have a first. Do we have a second?
This is Amy Barnhart. I'll second.
Thank you. We have a second.
Olivia, second.
Thank you. Ms. Wheeler, would you call the roll?
Ms. Barnhart,
Approve.
Ms. Bowles,
Approve.
Mr. First,
Yes.
and Pastor Linder.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you all for your time tonight and have a great evening.
You do the same. We have taken on to item 2, application 2020-5270, address 9141 First Gate Drive for residential variance. Ms. Wheeler?
Thank you, Mr. First.
Mr. Chairman, just real quick, I want to pipe in just for a minute.
Sure.
Just for purposes of this agenda item and this application, I had a conversation with member Barnhart, and my understanding is, based upon my conversation with her, she's going to be recusing from discussion, deliberation, and voting on this particular application.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Our second case this evening is for residential zoning variance number 2020-5270. The property is located at 9141 First Gate Drive. This is within the suburban residential zone. And the applicant is requesting BZBA approval for a zoning variance to construct a new, what will initially be an attached carport and then eventually a attached garage, approximately 930 square feet. The zoning code does require that the minimum side yard setback be a minimum of 8 feet and minimum aggregate of 20 feet. The proposed addition would result in a side yard setback of less than 1 foot on the northeast side and aggregate setback of approximately 16 feet. Additionally, the code requires that garage doors be located 3 feet behind the front building line. In this case, the front building setback is actually will actually be unchanged, but the facade will, of course, be predominantly garage. And that, I believe the applicant is on.
Yes. Hi, my name is Ben Pacheco. I'm the designer. Just a couple of things, I guess, to mention. There's a little background on the project. The owner has this car trailer, as you can see in the first image, that he'll like to give some cover to. He's been parking it for many years here on the side of the house, and the goal is to create first a carport and then an enclosed garage for not only for privacy but for to kind of enclose it from from visuals, to give better visuals to the neighbors. And so, the goal is to of the addition is to harmonize with the existing house, so have the same materials, and it's not really going to affect negatively the adjacent neighbor. And then, granting the variance is also not going to affect utilities either. So with that said, the hardship here is there's not really other way or other place to park the trailer other than kind of here on the side. parking it on the street is not really an option. So the owner, would like to request this variance for essentially a 0-foot setback so that he can enclose this and get some privacy for the trailer and some cover. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boucher. Ms. Wheeler, is the trailer as it's parked now, is that in compliance with our current codes?
So with the new zoning ordinance, it encourages stored recreational vehicles to be located within an enclosed structure or otherwise screened from view. So if it's not within an enclosed structure, it does need to be on a hard paved surface and screened from view. Typically we, interpret that to mean either privacy fence or hedges, evergreens, that kind of thing.
Thank you. Is there any questions or discussion from members of the board?
Mr. First, I have a question. Benjamin, my name is Chris Shug. I'm the city attorney here. Can you tell me what the purpose of the car trailer is?
The purpose of the trailer is he uses it for cars. So he has he goes to races every now and then. So he has some cars that he owns, and then so that's the main purpose for the trailer.
So he uses the car trailer to transport cars to like automobile races.
Right.
Okay, does he have the ability to be able to store that vehicle or that trailer on another property where he wouldn't require a variance?
I don't believe he has other properties. That's why he's looking to do this. And I mean, he did mention that if he's not able to do it here, that he might have to move elsewhere. But he'll like to stay here because he's been here for, I think he said 20 years now. So, and he's had it for many years like this. So I think ideally he'll like to stay where he is and be able to do it.
Yeah, and if I understood I'm a little bit confused about the statement of hardship. And I understand that the new zoning code would not permit the trailer to be there in its current state. The hardship here being that he absolutely has to have the trailer and the car on his property, even if it's not otherwise permitted by the zoning code, because he has no other place to put it. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. I mean, I guess I would take the legal position, just for members of the board, that is not an adequate statement of hardship. That's more of a statement of convenience. And so when we're trying to differentiate between the last application and this one, I think that's where we run into that type of distinction.
Thank you, Mr. Shook. I was going to ask, I am aware that storage facilities do exist for the storage of trailers such as this, where they're not allowed on residential properties. It seems like that might be an applicable scenario for the applicant here.
And that's the only question I had and the only issue I really wanted to address, much like the last application.
Thank you. Benjamin, so I guess I don't understand two questions. The first question is wouldn't a fence be cheaper? That would bring it into compliance there by screening it from view. Even a fence with a gate would be considerably cheaper, I imagine. And then B, one of the things that was not clear to me from the application is, what's the timeline for converting the carport into a garage. If one of the requirements of the code is that it be screened from view, I'm not entirely certain that even, a carport with maybe no sides, no door on it, if that really, as you see there, I don't know that that really satisfies the requirement of the code that it be screened from view. I don't really consider that an enclosed, enclosed environment either.
Sure. I guess to your comment, I agree with that a fence would be cheaper. And the carport would be likely only there for a couple months, maybe 6 months to a year, and then it would be converted to the garage so that it would be enclosed. I guess the only thing about the fence is it would have to be a pretty tall fence to be able to cover the entirety of the height of the trailer, I'm thinking. I guess does the code say that it has to be completely covered or just partially if it was a fence?
Let me get the accurate code section for you. Just a minute.
Chris, I believe it's 1105.01 section C is the actual language.
Yeah, it looks like section C, subsection II. This is something that we were looking at potentially amending with some zoning code cleanups in the fall. But it indicates that there is recreational equipment is permitted in a residential district if they follow certain requirements, such as a vehicle shall not be stored in the front facade or within 6 feet of the rear property line. It has to be screened from view by all contiguous parcels of land. So let's say, for example, he had a privacy fence for which he would obviously need a permit. Would that privacy fence be tall enough, and it can only be a maximum of 6 feet, would it be tall enough to be able to screen that trailer from view in the contiguous properties? I don't know that. I'm not sure the applicant necessarily knows that either.
I suspect it would not.
Yeah, I think the trailer is a little bit higher than that. I want to say it's 9 feet maybe to the top of the trailer. So you would see a good 3 feet, I guess, just the top.
And I think that probably another problem with this application, and I'm not looking for problems, but one of the factors that the board needs to consider is whether it's consistent with the character of surrounding pieces of property. If you look at the rendering here in the photos, this is, at least in that area of First Gate, a significant departure from the standard house in that area. So that is probably not something that is necessarily consistent with the character of that neighborhood.
Benjamin, I have a question. I'm looking at it on Google, and really the trailer, from what I'm seeing, if you were going to add another garage, it's not uncommon. Clearly, this is encroaching on the side yard setback, which is why one of the variances is here. But why the excessive link towards the back that makes it out of character? As you can see here, the trailer is not past the back end of the home, yet it's significantly past when you look at the garage and what has been presented tonight on what the schematics of the garage would be. If you could walk me through why that is and why it's so out of character, it may be something that the board could maybe take a look at.
Sure. Yeah, the idea for the extra length is to be able to unload, like have a little more extra room in case he wanted to unload one of the vehicles. and that's the main reason, really. But if you know, it can certainly be shortened to limit the length of it.
One of my concerns with the application too is our zoning code is not particularly in favor of creating what's called a snout house, and that's the reason for the garage door setback. I am concerned that the majority of the facade of this house would be garage. That's certainly not particularly keeping in character with the surrounding properties. Is there any additional discussion or questions? I'd entertain a motion if there is not.
Emily, would you pull up the top down again? Benjamin, I'm sorry, I may not have caught it at the beginning, but are you the general contractor that would be building this?
No, I'm the designer.
Okay. Would it not be easier for the applicant to say lease some space elsewhere? It potentially would be less of a hardship than to build a structure so massive of this requirement on a space that is, I think, in our opinion, maybe clearly not able to hold such a structure, and it certainly doesn't meet the confines of the existing neighborhood character.
Yeah, I mean, that could potentially be a conversation with the owner to have. And yeah, I don't know how willing he is to have to want to have a rental, I guess, for his carport or for his trailer. I mean, would it make any difference if it was shorter in length? Like if it was aligned to with the house, with the rear of the house?
I think it would still be very difficult to make the case of hardship and practical difficulty. And the concern being that in a residential district, if you grant a variance of this nature with a loose definition of hardship, then it becomes a bit of open season on variances in residential subdivisions.
Benjamin, why the standing seam metal roof when the rest of the house has shingles?
Well, the reason for that is the pitch of the roof, because it's a pretty minimal pitch. You can't really. It's not recommended to do shingles with less than like a 4 to 12, or in this case, I think we're proposing a 3 to 12 pitch. But it's just a matter of like flashing and those kind of things so that it drains properly.
Sure, that makes sense. I mean, also keep in mind too that the pitch of the roof, it's very clear from your elevations that the pitch of the roof is not really keeping in with the character of the house either. So that is something that stands out to me.
I would mention one thing, and Mr. Boucher brought this up to me. We are looking at fixing some things in the zoning code that we've noticed since its passage, things that could probably be drafted a little bit better, a little bit clearer, some standards that we might want to change. And one of those standards deals with recreational equipment, such as this one. And I think what we talked about, what we're potentially looking at, is allowing recreational equipment on a residential property if it is set back so far from the right of way. So we wouldn't want one parked so close up on the driveway that it potentially affects the view of traffic. But one such as this that is set back as far as it is may at some point, if we amend the zoning code, be in compliance. So that would be another way that the applicant would be able to maintain the trailer without having to ask for the garage.
Additionally, Emily, would you mind doing the top down on the Google view so we could see? I'm just thinking that, you know, some of these, and I'm just thinking out loud as we're sitting here discussing, you know, we see a lot of homeowners that do have garages. Typically they don't attach it. If they typically build another garage, typically it's detached. Sometimes they put it behind the house and things like that. You know, was there room if it was a much smaller garage that maybe just held the trailer? Could it be offset towards the back and behind, and yet just extending the driveway out, therefore, you know, allowing you know, that building to be on the property without needing a variance for side yard setbacks, and it would be obviously behind the home itself, putting it into compliance.
Given the trailer, Mr. Boucher, I'm skeptical that even a more narrow garage would meet any sort of side yard setback. I mean, that side yard is very narrow on that side, and the trailer is pretty wide.
Mr. First, I must have misspoke. I meant not narrow, but in its length, a shorter length than what was proposed. And then if you're pushing that towards the rear of the property and off of the side yard, potentially it could come into compliance. I'm not saying that it would, and I'm not saying it's something the applicant would want. I'm just giving other options that could potentially work that wouldn't require a variance. However, if I was the applicant, I would hold true to what Mr. Shook had said and work with the city on potentially passing, some changes, amendments to the zoning code that make it a little easier for individuals such as himself that have trailers, that if doing the right thing with those trailers, not having them in front of the home, having them on the side, having a neat and tidy appearance, and you know, those things I think are the easiest that would bring him into compliance.
Certainly seems the cheapest. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I guess that's what I'm getting at. As she's showing it, see how deep the lot is?
Mm-hmm.
He could build a garage towards the back of the property, almost in the center of the property, at a little bit shorter, not narrower, shorter than what he currently has. Putting it into the back, it would be very well screened back there with the trees, as long as he's keeping out of the floodplain. I'm assuming there is one via the creek that I'm looking at. But if he did that and he brought the driveway back, he could really have a garage. It would be well screened. It wouldn't be on his side yard. It would be a detached garage. I think one of the things that we would require when he would go to a minor site plan is that we would look and make sure that that garage would meet the standards of that community, meaning it needs to be more craftsman, more Americana style than the modern look that he had shown. But that could be a potential solution as well. That's outside of the purview of what he is asked here for tonight.
Yeah, I guess the challenging part of doing it in the back is the site has a pretty nice drop as it drops down towards the creek. So he would, yeah, have to do probably a good amount of infill to level that for the placement of the garage. And that would be the only, I guess, difficulty. But it is possibly a good option. Or maybe if it wasn't so much towards the front, like you were saying, Andrew, maybe if the garage is maybe like halfway on the home, sort of like where the ridge is, and that way it's like set back from the house, and it's not so apparent to the street.
And certainly as staff, we would be willing to work with you to potentially come up with something that maybe is more applicable. But that's something that we could do outside of this meeting, in-house to work with you and your client,
Sure.
given the board's decision tonight.
So just to clarify procedurally, and I know members of the board received the memorandum that my office sent out on May 20th. Procedurally, if the board is inclined to deny the application in its entirety, the recommendation would be to reach a consensus opinion based on your discussion this evening, and then adjourn the application for now until a written decision can be filed with the board, and then the board can vote on that written decision at the next meeting. That's the clearest way to do it, because if there's an appeal from a variance denial to the court will send it back to the board without a written decision.
Mr. Chair, it's Pastor Linder, and I appreciate the clarification from Attorney Shook. I've been sitting here thinking, and I'm still fairly convinced that this is not in keeping with the character of that neighborhood, and so I would be inclined to decline this request, just to let you know what I'm thinking at this point.
Thank you, Pastor Linder. Ms. Bowles?
I'm in favor of Pastor Linder as well.
As far as my opinion, yeah, I'm not convinced of the hardship requirement is met here, and I do agree it is not in keeping with the character of the surrounding developments or even the existing property. So I certainly entertain a motion if anyone would like to make one.
We shouldn't make a motion now, just based
Okay.
on the consensus from the participating members, Mr. First, Ms. Bowles, and Mr. Linder. I'll go ahead and draft a written decision that's consistent with that consensus opinion, submit it for the agenda for the next meeting, and then you can make a motion and vote on it at the next meeting. Only those members who were present for the discussion and deliberation can vote on it at the next meeting. So it can't be voted on unless all three, Mr. First, Ms. Bowles, and Mr. Linder, are present.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shook.
I do have a question, quick question. So before the next meeting, is it possible to maybe revise some of the drawings and resubmit to show something that would be more set back? That would go maybe more with the feel of the neighborhood?
That's certainly possible. You'd have to formally withdraw the current application and then resubmit a new application.
I see.
Well, if that's a path that we'd like to take, then I believe that concludes the open items this evening. If there's no further business, then I would like to adjourn the meeting at 6:53 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Thank you all.